After this shooting, the evidence will be that all four of these men, the defendant, 12E, Illz, and the victim, all left the scene. You'll hear that there were at least 2 people who called 911 to report this crime who were just people living in the surrounding area, not actually involved in the altercation itself. You'll hear that the 911 callers were reporting different information. So the first call would be that the gunshots were fired at Argyle and Selma. The second call will be that the gunshots were fired in the area closer to Vista Del Mar and El Centro. You will hear from the officer that as they responded, they come to the scene looking for a victim. That's their primary focus. Trying to find anyone who needs immediate life-saving attention. Their second focus will be looking for the potential suspects if they can find them. And you'll hear from the officer that as he's receiving information that's taking him to different locations, he's actually going between the different locations and trying to piece together what happened. But what will be important from his testimony is that he is not given a precise location to exactly where this shooting happened. And with the limited information that he has, he and his partners are doing the best job that they can to find any victims, any suspects, or any evidence of a shooting. You'll hear the officer talk to different people who were just out and about, try to figure out what was going on, that neither of the 911 callers would meet with them, and that they searched not only the surrounding streets, but they primarily focused on the parking lot that was right at that corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma, because the second 911 caller had told him, or had relayed that it was possible that the shooting was happening into a car. The officer will tell you that they searched the area and they did not find any evidence of a shooting. They didn't find a victim with injuries. They didn't find any of the suspects. And they didn't find any discharged cartridge cases, which are what come out of a gun after you discharge it in the surrounding area. But again, they don't know exactly where to look with the limited information that they're given. You will also hear from Mr. Ephron that approximately an hour, and he's not precise on the exact time, but approximately an hour after the shooting, he himself returned to the location. Now at this time, the police have already responded and left. Mr. Ephron will tell you that he and his girlfriend went there specifically to look for evidence that this had happened, evidence of this shooting. And Mr. Ephron will tell you, because he knew exactly where the shooting happened, that he was able to locate 2 fired cartridge cases. And this is actually a photograph that Mr. Ephron himself took of one of the fired cartridge cases that he found. Mr. Ephron, you'll hear, went to the police 2 days later, walked into the Hollywood police station to report this crime happening. He brought the 2 fired cartridge cases with him, and he gave them to the police. You will hear that the 2 cartridge cases that he brought in were 9mm Luger caliber cartridge cases. However, you will also hear from Mr. Ephron that immediately after the shooting, about an hour and a half later, he started text messaging the defendant. And he text messaged the defendant, "You try killing me." That was the first message he sent to him. And you'll hear that Mr. Mayer's response was to deny that anything happened. The defendant, in abbreviation, says, "What the fuck is you talking about? Why are you telling people I shot at you?" Denying that any shooting has even happened. Mr. Ephron confronts him again. You set me up to try to take me from my daughter. And the defendant responds, I tried to do what I know you hate me, I hate you too. The defendant responds again, stop making shit up. Again, denying any confrontation took place. Certainly any shooting. We have already told you in jury selection, and you will hear evidence, that after this shooting, Mr. Ephron sought money from Mr. Mayers. In fact, hours after the shooting, so this is the next day, November 7th, in the early morning hours, 3:40 a.m., you'll hear that Mr. Ephron sent a message to one of his friends saying that he wants money. And identifying the reason why he wants that money is because Mr. Mayers shot at him. You will also hear that based upon these two incidents, the parking lot and the shooting on the corner, that Mr. Ephron filed a civil lawsuit against Mr. Mayers. At the end of this case, you will not be asked to award Mr. Ephron any money. So that consideration will not be a part of your what you're asked to determine. Moving forward in time, you'll hear from LAPD detectives that Mr. Mayers' home was searched on April 20th of 2022, and that during that search, LAPD detective recovered a magazine for a semi-automatic pistol that was 9mm caliber, and that it was loaded with 6 unfired 9mm Luger rounds of live ammunition. You will hear that these items were found in Mr. Mayers' bedroom closet. You will also hear that there was no handgun that was 9mm in Mr. Mayers' home that was for that magazine. So you have a 9mm magazine, but no handgun to go with it. The last point I want to leave you with before I conclude is that we expect, in this case, that the defense will call 12B, Mr. Phillips, to testify. At the time of the shooting, again, he's friends with all these participants. He's 32 years old. And it is expected that he will testify that the defendant was, in fact, the person on the video who fired the 2 gunshots that we hear. So it will essentially be uncontested that Mr. Mayers was the person who fired the gun at that street corner, and that he will tell you the gun that the defendant fired was a starter pistol. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what the evidence in this case will show at the end of this case. As I've said, we expect that the defense will attempt to present an alternative explanation for what happened that night. But we ask you to do one thing, which is, as you evaluate the evidence from both sides in this case, to not leave your common sense at the door. And wait until the end of the case, when you have all the evidence, to make your decision. Listen to the court's instructions on the law, and return the only just verdict there is. Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll take the break now. Please be outside the courtroom doors at 1:30.